Imagine it's 6 a.m. on a Tuesday. The alarm hasn't even gone off yet, but your brain is already sprinting. You're mentally checking off a to-do list that feels more like a survival guide than a schedule. By the time your feet hit the floor, you're already behind. You feel this strange, buzzing pressure in your chest, a need with a capital N, a need to produce, to win, and to move faster than the person next to you. Maybe you've called this ambition or hustle culture, but in psychology, we call it the type A trap. It's the feeling that no matter how much you achieve, the finish line just keeps moving back. And if you don't learn how this script is written in your brain, you'll spend your whole life running, only to realize you've been on a treadmill that was never designed to let you off. Today, we're breaking down the 4 personality types that dictate how you handle stress, success, and even your own health. In the 1950s, 2 cardiologists noticed something strange in their waiting room. The chairs were worn out, but only on the very front edge of the cushions. It was as if their patients couldn't even sit back and relax while waiting for a doctor. They were literally on the edge of their seats, ready to bolt. This led Meyer, Friedman, and Rosenman to define the Type A behavior pattern. At its core, Type A isn't just being a hard worker. It's defined by 3 specific pillars: time urgency, competitiveness, and hostility. Time urgency is that inner stopwatch that makes you hate slow walkers. It creates a constant state of hypervigilance in the brain. Your amygdala, the brain's alarm system, is essentially stuck in the on position. This triggers a steady drip of cortisol and adrenaline into your bloodstream. In the short term, this makes you a high achiever and a fast mover. But biologically, your body thinks it's constantly running away from a predator. This is why Type A individuals have a significantly higher risk of heart disease. It's not the hard work that kills. It's the chronic activation of the stress response. You aren't just working hard. You are physically marinating in stress hormones. I want you to imagine a man named David. David is the guy everyone at the office admires. He's the first one in, the last one out, and his LinkedIn is a literal trophy case. He just closed the biggest deal of his career, a multi-million-dollar contract. This was the moment he told himself he could finally breathe. But as he sits in his car in the parking lot, the silence is deafening. Instead of feeling a surge of joy, he feels a strange, hollow ache in his chest. His phone buzzes with a congratulatory text, and his first thought isn't, "I did it." His first thought is, "What's next?" Because this isn't enough. He realizes he's missed 3 of his daughter's soccer games this month. He realizes his wife has stopped asking him what time he'll be home for dinner. David has won the game, but he's lost the capacity to actually enjoy the prize. This is the shadow side of the high achiever. When your identity is a performance, you can never actually stop performing, because the moment you stop, you're afraid you might disappear. If Type A is a Formula One engine redlining at all times, Type B is a high-performance cruiser designed for the long haul. Commonly, people think Type B is just a polite way of saying lazy. But in psychology, that couldn't be further from the truth. Type B individuals can be just as ambitious and successful as Type A's. The difference lies in their autonomic nervous system response. While Type A lives in the sympathetic state, fight or flight, Type B has a much higher vagal tone, allowing them to access the parasympathetic state. This is the rest and digest system that keeps the heart rate steady. When a Type B person hits a deadline, they don't feel a surge of cortisol. They focus on the task, but they don't attach their entire self-worth to the speed of it. This leads to a phenomenon called flow state without the urgency stress. Because they aren't constantly checking the clock, they often produce higher quality work. They have lower levels of trait anxiety, which acts as a protective shield for the heart. A type B person sees a win as a milestone, not a temporary relief from failure. They are biologically wired to enjoy the process, not just the finish line. Imagine someone who isn't rushing to the front of the line, like David. Instead, they're the person in the back of the room, blending into the shadows. Meet Sarah. On the outside, she's steady, reliable, and quiet. But inside, there is a storm that never actually breaks. Sarah is a type D, the distressed personality. She feels the same high-octane stress as the type A executive, but while type A explodes outward with frustration, Sarah implodes. She worries about the future, she dwells on the past, and she feels a deep sense of insecurity. But she never tells anyone. She smiles, nods, and keeps it all tucked away. She's terrified of being judged, so she stays socially inhibited. It's like she's screaming inside a soundproof room. She feels lonely even when she's surrounded by people who love her. This is the silent killer of personality types, and it's more common than you think. In psychology, type D stands for distressed. It is defined by two primary traits, negative affectivity and social inhibition. Negative affectivity is the tendency to experience negative emotions across time and situations. It's like having a filter on your brain that highlights threats and ignores rewards. Social inhibition is the tendency to suppress these emotions in social interactions. When you combine these two, you create a pressure cooker effect. Research shows that type D individuals have chronically high levels of cortisol. Unlike type A, whose cortisol spikes and drops, type D stays elevated. This leads to chronic inflammation and a weakened immune system. It's a phenomenon known as psychosomatic loading. The brain signals danger, but the body has no way to release the energy. This is why type D is a major predictor of poor outcomes in heart patients. It's not just about the stress you feel, it's about the stress you hide. By suppressing the emotion, you are essentially bottling the biology of fear. Imagine a woman named Maya standing on the edge of a jagged cliff. The wind is whipping against her face, and her heart is hammering against her ribs. But she isn't afraid. In fact, this is the only time she feels truly alive. To Maya, a stable office job feels like a slow-motion suffocating. She needs the chaos, the risk, and the all-or-nothing stakes of the moment. She is what we call a type T, the thrill seeker. While David, type A, is running toward a goal, Maya is running toward a feeling. It's an electric, borderline addictive sense of total presence. But this isn't just about extreme sports or jumping out of planes. It's the entrepreneur who bets their entire life savings on a single idea. It's the person who thrives in a crisis while everyone else is panicking. For a type T, the greatest risk isn't failure, it's being bored. Type T stands for thrill, and it's deeply rooted in our neurochemistry. Psychologist Frank Farley coined this term to describe the big T personality. This type is closely linked to the extroversion trait in the Big Five model. But specifically, it's about sensation seeking and dopamine sensitivity. Some brains have fewer dopamine receptors, or they are less sensitive. This means a normal day feels chemically dull or gray to a type T. They require a much higher level of stimulation to reach a baseline of happy. This is known as the low arousal theory of personality. To feel the same buzz you get from a cup of coffee, they might need to skydive. There are two sides to this, T positive and T negative. T-positive individuals channel this into creativity, entrepreneurship, or discovery. T-negative individuals might struggle with impulse control or substance abuse. It's all the same biological engine. The difference is where you steer the car. Understanding this helps a type T realize they aren't reckless. They are simply wired to thrive in high-stakes, high-novelty environments. Think back to David, Sarah, and Maya. They all feel trapped by the very traits that define them. David is successful but exhausted. Sarah is steady but lonely. Maya is bold but restless. You might see pieces of yourself in one of them, or maybe a messy mix of all three. The trap isn't having a type A or type D brain. The trap is believing that this is just who you are and it can't be changed. I remember sitting in a coffee shop, watching people rush past the window. I realized that most of us aren't living. We're just reacting to our biology. We're like actors following a script we never actually sat down to write. But there is a space between the impulse and the action, a tiny, quiet gap where you can choose to breathe instead of hurry, where you can choose to speak up instead of hiding. That gap is where your freedom lives, and it starts with a shift in strategy. The good news is that your personality isn't a life sentence, it's a set of habits. Thanks to neuroplasticity, we can actually thin out these ingrained neural pathways. If you're type A, you don't have to stop being ambitious. You just have to practice trait adaptation to lower your baseline stress. This involves training your vagus nerve through intentional B-state activities. Even 5 minutes of deep diaphragmatic breathing can reset the type A alarm. For the type D, the strategy is cognitive reappraisal. This is the process of identifying a negative thought and challenging its validity. Instead of hiding, you practice micro-disclosures, sharing one small truth. This breaks the cycle of social inhibition and lowers your internal pressure. For the type T, the goal is high-stakes channeling. You find constructive risks that provide the dopamine hit without the destruction. By understanding your biological type, you gain the manual to operate it. You move from being a victim of your traits to a master of your temperament. So, as you go through your week, I want you to pay attention. Notice the moment your chest tightens when the line at the grocery store is too long. Notice the silence you keep when you actually have something important to say. Notice the restless itch to do something, anything, just to feel alive. These aren't just quirks of your personality, they are signals from your biology. But remember, you are the driver, not the car. Whether you're a type A, B, D, or T, the goal isn't to fix who you are. The goal is to understand the machine so you can finally enjoy the ride. You don't have to stay on the treadmill if you don't want to. You can step off, take a breath, and realize the finish line was never real. Because at the end of the day, your personality is just a tool, and you are the one holding it.